landscape photography world, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This time I'll be talking to Craig Crosthwaite about his work and motivations, along with a range of other topics I hope you'll find interesting. After 30 years in the advertising industry, Craig decided to follow his passion for the coast, surfing and photography. Craig started surfing at the age of 8 and he's still catching waves. Surfing has given him a passion for the water and an understanding of the elements, wind, waves and weather. He also loved photography but had limited knowledge of the wonderful things you could achieve through capturing light. So he undertook a course at RMIT in Melbourne and ignited a passion for all things photographic. Craig has combined his love of the ocean and his sense of adventure with his newly acquired skills to create a substantial and high-quality portfolio of work. Craig Crosthwaite's images are a stunning record of the world around us, but they're also an indication of his visual sensitivity, situational awareness, and his commitment to be at that place at that time, ready to be surprised by nature. This is not a simple or easy thing, and in this, being a surfer has obviously been instructive. Craig's images show a deep understanding of nature's ebb and flow, an ability to anticipate elemental movements and place himself at key points in time and space as all these components are drawn together. He has an artist's eye, knowing how to position himself in the landscape to bring the light and natural elements together to create stunning images. We discuss his passion and how his advertising and graphic design background have shaped his work, along with some hair-raising adventures during thunderstorms he has experienced. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Craig. Welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Thanks, Grant. I'm doing very well, thank you.
That's good. Very pleased to have you on and pleased that you said yes to coming on to the show. Been following your work for a while. CC Images for anyone that's not heard of Craig Crosthwaite. Can you tell us, how did you get started in photography and in particular landscape photography?
Well, I was a graphic designer and then was in the advertising industry for many years. So when I was studying back in the late 70s, early 80s, just giving away my age, graphic design, we had cameras at university and we had a dark room. So it was back in those days, it was all film and what have you. And there was a group of us that used to surf. So we'd grab the good cameras and go and take photos of each other and then go back to the dark room and process them. So I always had an interest in cameras, but when I was I could see that my marketing consultancy was starting to slow down. I was a bit over client, so I thought I better go and learn a new trick. So I thought, well, I'll get right into photography. I'll buy myself a good digital camera, and I went and did a course. That was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Just to learn how, what a camera does again, and then away I went. And I couldn't put the camera down.
Yeah,
so
right.
I just off it went, and it was as they say, it's if you're going into retirement and you can find a passion, it's a pretty good thing, which was lucky for me.
Yeah, and I guess it's not a bad passion to have. As you say, sort of moving into retirement. I mean, there's a lot of young people into it too, but if you're looking for something to do, after work, it's certainly something that can consume a lot of time, but also I think be a really fun creative outlet as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, going into retirement, you sort of think, well, what am I going to do? And one of the things I wanted to do was just see a lot of Australia. Mm-hmm. And that's, I didn't sort of realise that photography would drive that. And I know that's what it's delivered. Because it's, when you want to go out and take photos, you tend to go out exploring, you're walking into waterfalls, doing all that sort of thing. So you get to see a lot of places as well as take a lot of photos of those places. So,
yeah, sure.
It really is. It's a great hobby or a pastime, which is probably turning into a small business at the moment. It wasn't supposed to go that way, but anyway, we keep going.
So I guess just talking about that, what was it about landscapes and seascapes? I guess was it that harking back to surfing, and I think you mentioned when we were talking just before we started recording that you're still an avid surfer. Is that still part of the reason why that's part of the passion, or?
Yeah, look, I think surfing has given me. I've been surfing since 1968 when my dad bought me my first fiberglass surfboard. So it gave me a really good understanding of the ocean and waves, tides, weather conditions, which actually fit in really well with landscape / seascape photography. And I think early days, most of my stuff was, around the ocean. I've sort of branched out into different areas now, but I still love it, and that's my passion. Is to in Anglesey, I'm pretty lucky. I've got some really great spots on the coast, and I can check tides and swells and conditions. So the surfing gave me an understanding of being able to get to spots and know that I was reasonably safe and understanding where I needed to get to if a big set does come. So I think that surfing has really helped me.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of where you mentioned Anglesey, where you live, how much does that influence what you shoot or where you shoot?
Initially, it was everything. It was every day, and I'd keep just showing up every morning, but to the spots within sort of 20 kilometres around Anglesey. But I suppose nowadays I've taken a lot of photographs of all of those spots. But it's amazing if you go out wandering during the day. I take the dogs down to the beach and I just wander into new areas. If the tides are really low, for instance. And it's amazing how many different comps you can find, even though, I've been hanging around that area for 40 years. It's staggering how many times you wander across something and go, wow, I've never seen that before. I'd better go and check tides and cloud conditions and I'll come back here. So, yeah, but I also like sort of planning to go a little bit further nowadays. So just broadening my horizons, if you like.
Yeah, and I think particularly with seascapes, the beaches in particular, and not just the conditions, but the beaches themselves, they can actually change over time as well, quite significantly. I know the storms here in the East Coast at the moment. There's a lot of differences. I'm seeing a lot of differences in some of the beaches that I visited from where they were a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh, we've had a lot of easterlies and southeasterlies here in Victoria over summer, which is not good for surfing. But it's amazing how much sand is moving around, and places that used to be sandy beaches are now rock beaches, and vice versa. So you're right. You can every time you go out. It doesn't matter how many times you go to the same spot. You never get the same shot. There's different
definitely. You might have a favourite comp or two, but the shot itself is actually going to be quite different. It's one of the things that keeps bringing me back to seascaping as well. Is that ability to go to the same place day after day and see something different.
Yeah. And I found it really interesting when I first went, up to the Grampians, or last year I went up to Broken Hill and started taking some shots with no ocean in it. And it's a completely different set of rules. You go, well, there's no wave movement. There's like how do my compositions work, which is really good to push yourself. But you do feel comfortable when you're in your element. Mine's out at Point Road Night, which I can see from my house, and I wander down there. It's become quite popular, but I still love it out there. If you pick the right tides and the right swell, where you've got a lot of water movement across the reef, then it's probably my happy place.
Absolutely, yeah. I guess when did it start to become more about art than about just taking shots of you and your mates and whatever, surfing, etc. When did you notice that transition, I guess, and what do you think it was that drove that transition for you?
Oh, it was definitely, 4.5 years ago, I signed up for I think it was an 8-week or a 12-week course at RMIT in Melbourne.
Yep.
And it was every Saturday, which was when I was signing up, I was just going, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to hang in Melbourne every Saturday for 12 weeks. But from the moment I walked in there and started to look, I love learning. And I also think that originally I was a graphic designer. And I think that artistic and creative knowledge then just translated into the photography knowledge that I was learning. And I loved it.
Yeah.
It became a passion then. Like the moment after the first session in that course, and of course I was 59 when I did that course. Everyone else in the course was 18, 19, 20. And I'm pretty sure they were looking at me when the following you came in with your USB stick and your homework, and the lecturer would say, well, who's done their homework? And everyone would look at me, not him again. It was because they all had lives, like they were either studying or they had young families and jobs and things like that, where I just retired. So I had all this time. So I just went out and did everything and brought it all in and what have you. I think I was the teacher's pet. So about the fourth week, I came in with an apple for him and they just gave it away.
So I guess, do you think that graphics design background did that help, or did that bring along with it its own sort of, I don't want to call it restrictions necessarily, but a mindset that was slightly different to what might have been a photography mindset?
Yeah, look, I think composition, it's helped me with composition. And when I first started, I had the photography community has blown me away. When I first started, guys like Craig Richards, who's a bit of a legend down in Warrnambool, and then he instantly followed me, and then I started talking to him. And I think he said to me very early, he said, like, you will learn all of the technical stuff. He said, but what I can see that you've got is the ability to see a composition.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, that's a big tick on. And this guy's really good. His compositions are great. And I think that's what the graphic design gave me. It's a balance in an image. I've always been, I sort of didn't concentrate on it, but my foregrounds, I think, are something that I've always just instantly worked on to try and, there might be a scene in the background, but I'm always looking for a really different foreground, something that's leading you into the image and things like that. And I'm not sure whether I learnt that or whether that just naturally came from my graphic design background. So
yeah, okay.
So I think that's what drove it.
How has that helped, I guess, in terms of your editing style and that sort of thing? Obviously, you probably would have had a bit of a leg up with some of the design tools like Photoshop and whatever over some people that come into photography without any of that, editing background. Do you think that's helped, or brought its own sort of different mindset around how you approach those things?
Definitely cheated the normal system when it comes to that. When I first started, I was a graphic designer, but I quickly realised that graphic designers had a very short lifespan in the advertising industry, because there was always some young kid going to be coming up. So I quickly got into client side, and then I started my own ad agency. So I owned it.
Yep.
I got to employ the creatives, but I also, being a creative, I got some control over it. So we would sit down. I got to sit into creative meetings and give some direction with a business thoughts patterns to it. So when I started photography, a long-time studio manager of mine, Gail, who'd been working for me for nearly 20 years, and she is just the master at Lightroom, Photoshop, all of the programs. And so I rang her. She's now freelancing, and was back then. So she was doing some work for me, and I just said to her, "Hey, could you just teach me the basics of Lightroom and Photoshop?" And she said, "Yeah, not a problem." So she came over and sat with me, and we worked on. And whenever I had a question, I said, "I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to, stack an image or do a panorama or something like that." She get on the phone, and she comes straight back and say, "Go to here, go to that, do that, see." And I go, got it. So I had an online on tap education facility, if you like. Yeah. So, and I speak to other people. I go, "Oh, how did you go and do a course?" I go, "Oh no, I cheated because I bribed Gail. I said I'd take her out for lunch to her favourite restaurant if she helped me out." So,
like, I can say it's definitely worked.
Thank you. Although I'm always trying to, on YouTube, trying to work out better ways of doing things, and just looking at people's different workflows. I'm not sure I've got a workflow that works for me, but I'm not necessarily sure that it's the workflow that I probably should have. So,
I'm always finding new stuff. There's so many tutorial videos out there, and I look and dabble and play with stuff, and some stuff sticks and I keep it in the workflow, but other stuff just kind of goes, no, I don't know how that would actually work for me, the way I shoot and the style of things that I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I reckon I use about 15% of the capabilities.
Yeah. I know I'm still only very much scratching the surface, but I still think some of the things that Mark Rudis, F64 Academy, puts out, some of his stuff. He's probably the main resource where I've kept stuff in. There's a few that I've kept in, but I've probably kept about 5 or 6 things out of his workflows and his. I mean, the amount of in-depth knowledge he has is just phenomenal, and his understanding of color theory and all those sorts of things really makes it. Makes it, so for me, it sheets at home as, okay, this is why you would do it this way, as opposed to, here's the way I do it, and you just follow along blindly and go, okay, well, that didn't quite work for me. But because he goes into that sort of color theory, or the theory of why this is a better method than, method X is better than method Y, you can sit there and you can go, okay, now I know what it is that he's trying to do here. He's giving you more control over, tone or contrast or color that you didn't have by using that set of tools, using a different set of tools.
I think a game changer for me was when I was introduced to Raya Pro. Jimmy McIntyre. I mean, to be able to break your image down and be able to control, there's 8 channels of highlights and 8 channels of shadows and 6 channels. To be able to break it down like that and then figure out what you can do in each of those channels is, I think that was a major step in my processing.
Yeah, very, very much so. I'm the same. I'm a Raya Pro user as well, and I've just found it's something I don't know if it's something that I could live without, but I probably could. I could probably find other tools, but I've kind of adapted my workflow to the controls that are there, and so it just makes it very difficult to uproot and change, because you've really got to learn the new tools, and you got to think about things differently, and some of those tools might not give you the same controls, or I think it's horses for courses. Different people are going to do different things, but it's kind of influenced also the way that I shoot a little bit as well, with exposure blending in particular, so
Yeah.
I don't use grad filters at all. I just exposure blend. So,
exactly. I don't use filters a lot anymore. Occasionally I do. ND filters I use, but the graduated ones I use less and less. I just do some exposure blending, so it seems to work better anyway. You got more control.
Yeah. So when you're getting out into when you're getting out into the field, are you going out with a concept of what you want to capture, or are you, letting the conditions and the light sort of dictate where you're going to point the lens?
Oh, it's probably 50-50. There are times when you know that the light's going to be good, so you just go out there.
Yeah.
But especially with waterfalls, etc. I go out trying to find them first. I've actually in the last 2 years got right into trying to find the hidden waterfalls in the Otways.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I spend a week doing the research and finding which tracks I've got to walk down, and then ask the questions. I've got a little bit of a network of older guys. An elderly guy in Lorne whose parents and grandparents used to run sawmills.
Okay,
and logging businesses, and he pretty much knows every walking track in the Otways. And just picking their brains. So when you're going into that, it's 50% adventure and then 50% taking a photo when you actually succeed in finding the waterfall, which is it's a challenge, and it's exciting, and it's very rewarding as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting into some of those more remote and I guess less travel places is part of the fun of this sort of thing. You can get yourself, obviously into some places where very few people go, and that to me is one of the greatest experiences, is bringing out an image from somewhere that nobody's ever seen on screen or on film or wherever on paper before.
Yeah, and that is a wonderful feeling when you achieve that, and then you get to go to. You see some magnificent spots that everybody gets to shoot. So, of course, it's fun to go and visit those spots as well. And then when you're there to try and do something just a little bit different, to try and find a different foreground so that it is different. But, I think the adventure side of it and the discovery side of it is what I really love.
Yeah. What's the most notable experience you've had when you've been out and about?
That's a tough one. As I said, I think just some of the walks into waterfalls, or when I first took a half decent astro shot. I remember the first time I went out to shoot astro was with a guy called Christopher Smith.
Yep.
And we went up to the Grampians to shoot the eclipse of the moon. And I was standing out in the middle of a paddock, and I'd never shot at night before. So the first thing, number one, I couldn't see anything. Number two, I said to him at one stage, I think I'd been taking photos for about an hour, and I said, "How do you get them in focus?" The focus on. So he just looked at me and said, "What have you been doing for the last hour?" I said, "I don't know, trying to find out how to get it in focus." So and amazingly, that's just the simplest little thing. You see the magnification, find a star. All right, yeah, I've got it. So things like that, and there's been some amazing thunderstorms that I've been out in and captured, I think, some pretty amazing lightning shots. They're always a little bit exhilarating, trying not to get toasted.
Have you had any near misses or any horror stories?
No horror stories. there was last year, my wife and I went to Bendigo. There was a couple of art galleries that she wanted to see. So we went up, and it just happened to coincide with a massive thunderstorm. So I sort of shot in the afternoon at a beautiful church up there. And then I didn't really get much. I was on the wrong side of the church, and it was a bit iffy because I was too scared about, number one, standing on one of God's holy places trying to take a photo in a thunderstorm, and he was letting off all of the lightning around me. So, but I went back. I said to my wife after we'd been out for dinner, I might just go back to the church because they light it up at night, and I wasn't expecting there another thunderstorm. And when I got there, this massive thunderstorm rolled over, and there was lightning going off everywhere. And I had my camera set up. I was hiding under a tree, and there was a couple of times I had to go back and sit in the car. I just left the camera running because it wasn't raining, but there was a few, what I would say were a little bit too close for comfort. So I ended up just running out and grabbing my camera and bailing back to the car and getting out of there.
What's, I think, the main thing you've learned about the world through photography?
Just how amazing it is. I can't believe that I went through my life. And look, I think I appreciated nature, and I appreciated going to places, but I don't think, for instance, I would go to a waterfall and look at it for 5 minutes and then leave. Where now I'll go to a waterfall and spend 3 hours there.
Yeah.
And then work out, I've been there in the morning, but I'm pretty sure in the afternoon when the light's coming from a different direction. And so it's the appreciation of what light does to a scene, and but it's also just sitting there in nature. It is a really great pastime.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to Adam Carnage last night actually, and he's on the episode just before yours, and he was sort of talking about that prior to doing photography, you go for a walk, and it might be a 2-hour hike, or he talks to hikers as well because he does quite a lot of wandering around the Yorkshire moors and dales and so forth, and they might go for a 2-hour walk, or he used to go for a 2-hour walk, but now it takes him 4 to 5 hours because he's spending a lot more time stopping and taking in the scenery as opposed to just tramping through it and getting from point A to point B.
Exactly.
Total opposite to golf.
There's another one of my passions.
Okay.
I still haven't conquered that one yet either.
No, I think I found it way tougher than photography.
Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So have you, I guess, looking at your work, there's a lot of stuff there around that sort of sunset period, sunrises and so forth. Have you started doing much beyond those sort of, blue hour, golden hour periods and working through the daylight, or are you sort of still in those fringe light periods simply because the light's there?
Yeah, and that's when I love it. I mean, as a surfer, I've always woken up early, and my wife doesn't wake up early, so I can dedicate time to our lives together and still be able to go and take photographs. So especially during summer, I tend to go out early mornings because I wake up at 5 o'clock and just check my weather app. And even if it doesn't look really great, I sometimes just go out and just take some shots just because I'm awake, I'm up. But no, I don't tend to go out in the middle of the day unless it's to a waterfall. Sure. There's other things. I like to play golf. I like to go surfing. So I try not to let photography rule my whole life. And it's easy. That's easy to do because I just like the early mornings, and then sometimes if it's going to be a cracking evening, then I'll do that.
Yeah. Okay. So what time do you spend planning before you go out to do a shoot? You know, let's say you're going to, you know, take off from Anglesey and go somewhere else. Might be an hour and a half away. What would you spend a lot of time thinking about what it is that you're going to, you know, get there, take there, and so forth, or are you, you know, more spontaneous and just sort of turn up and hope for the best?
Oh no, look, I've always got my eye. We're sort of 2 hours from that 12 Apostles Port Campbell area.
Yep.
So I've always got my eye on the weather and the clouds, and if it starts to look good, then I start to plan about, oh, you know, we could do this. I could be down there. Do I go the night before, or do I? So yeah, I've always got my eye on the weather for places like that, because it's pretty easy for me to get to.
Yeah.
Although I'm not there, Johnny, on the spot all the time. So I don't just randomly drive down there if it's not going to be good.
Yep.
I tend to try and keep my eye on it. For instance, this weekend looks like it might be all right down there, and with a couple of clear nights as well. So sort of keeping my eye on that. But yeah, I've just, to digress, I've just bought a like a little teardrop camper.
Okay. Yep.
With the thoughts of, it's basically a queen size bed on wheels with a pop up kitchen and whatever.
I think I've seen a shot of that on your Instagram feed.
Yeah,
actually,
that's been loaded onto a boat.
Yeah,
It's been loaded onto a boat yesterday on the way from Fremantle to
cool
to Victoria. So, and the idea behind that is, my wife didn't like when I would drive to Port Campbell in the afternoon, and then I would shoot sunset, and then in summer I'd leave there at sort of 10 o'clock, and then I wouldn't get home till midnight. So the idea with that is that I can go a little bit further. I want to go and explore, you know, the east coast of Victoria, and then down to Robe and things like that. And I can just go disappear for a couple of days, just sleep in that, and I don't have to be driving around looking for accommodation and things like that. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. I've started doing planning on sort of that eastern side of Adelaide, of that coast around South Australia, and then you know, up into the south coast of New South Wales, where I can sort of get to within half a day, and then spend a couple of days and then come back. So I'm looking forward to that, and then that'll expand my planning. I'll be looking at cloud apps for about a third of Australia from that stage.
Fantastic. I'll looking forward to seeing the fruits of that. That sounds great. The wife and I actually, we've put a deposit on a motorhome which gets delivered in November. So our plan is to go and do a lap or two, depending on how long it takes us to get where we're going.
Well, my wife said that's a great idea. She said, so it's got a shower and a toilet.
Yeah.
And I went, no.
Yeah, no, our one does. It even has a little washing machine, a little 2 kilo one for lightweight stuff. But looking forward to getting out there and heading out onto the road, and you know, seeing. I mean, I've seen a fair bit, but you know, seeing some of the spots that I haven't been able to get to when the light's been right. You know, and you know, the idea with that is that ability to just sort of pull up somewhere the night before, or you know, sit outside it doing astro or something. The night before, and then hopefully, you know, if the sunrise is looking good, you know, just walk nearby to somewhere, rather than having to. I mean, for me now, it's an hour's drive to the nearest beach, so you know, it takes a bit of effort to drag myself out of bed and go and do it. But
it's and I think COVID's done that. I mean, it's really made people you know, think about going to see more of Australia.
Oh, absolutely,
it has with me. I mean, we were traditionally, you know, we were going overseas 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, going to New Zealand, which hopefully we get back to, and then you know, going to North America to ski during this time of the year, but didn't go this year. And then, but now I think there's more of a focus on, well, let's just go and see more of Australia. So
absolutely, and I think that's a great thing to be doing. You know, it's I mean, there's a lot of people that I think have missed out on a lot of Australia because they've been, heading to Bali or heading to Thailand or heading to the US or whatever because, it was, or New Zealand because it was relatively cheap. And, there's some places in Australia that I know, as I say, I've been to a few places, but there's a lot in between the places where I've flown to that, because I haven't had the car or haven't, been able to, drive a lap of the place. I know that I'm missing out on. I'd really like to see them.
Well,
and
this time last year, we a mate and I drove up to Broken Hill, and then we drove across through the back country to Mungo National Park, and then back down to Sea Lake. To Lake Tyrrell and things like that. And it was just such fun. When we got back, people said, "Well, what did you see?" And we said, "Well, there's nothing out there. It's just magnificent.
Desert, but it's amazing.
It's just awesome. It's just so amazing to do." And then people, I think they just look at you going, "What? There's nothing there." No, well, there isn't, but go and do it, and it just blows your mind how big the place is and
absolutely
how wonderful it is. Yeah,
I mean, I've not just through the podcast, but through social media as well. I've met a few people that I want to catch up with as well. I've never met them physically, but I've gotten to know them a little bit. Either through the podcast or through socials, and I think for me, it's going to be really interesting to sort of catch up with some of these people and actually meet them face to face, and hopefully go and have a shoot with them too. So
there you go. Put a circle around Anglesey and come
definitely.
on down.
The Great Ocean Road's definitely on the list. So I've been there a few times, but I've never really been there when the light's been quite right. It's always sort of been driving through from South Australia through to Melbourne or something.
Well, I mean, that stretch, everybody sort of goes to that stretch around between Warrnambool and Apollo Bay. From Apollo Bay back to Anglesey, there's some remarkable stuff in there.
Oh, absolutely, around Lorne and Bells and Anglesey, there's some stunning seascapes to be had. I think
there is.
Yeah,
we're blessed.
Definitely. I got to say, I think Australia is. There's a lot to see, and I'm gonna have a crack at seeing as much of it as I can.
Good on you.
So I guess getting back to you, which is the point of this conversation, do you do much printing of your work?
I don't print it myself. I've got a guy that prints it, so I'm trying to turn it into a business. Last year I probably sold, I don't know, 30 or 40 framed prints.
Okay, that's good.
Which was quite amazing. And I think I got to the stage where I just wanted to test out my business brain again to see if I could commercialize my hobby. So so I've sort of dabbled in that. So I've got a guy in Geelong, Arteria Printing. I'll give him a plug. Does a really great job. Michael Devine, really lovely young kid. He's actually the son of a girl that I went to high school with.
Wow!
Which I didn't know when I first started using him, but his mother was a lovely girl. So and married one of my good friends' older brother. So it's a very small world. So I've just got into it. I tried to tap into the market on that coast between Geelong and Lorne, where there's a lot of people that own holiday houses, and which have then turned into permanent houses during COVID. And just trying to tap into that emotional connection to a particular place. So trying to get people to rather than buy random artwork, to buy photographs of their favourite coast.
Something local.
which has tended to work. I've done a couple of exhibitions. I've got another one in Lawn coming up over Easter.
Nice.
Which has been really good. And just trying to connect with the local community. I think that's been the success that I've seen with selling my prints is getting the local community to have ownership of you as a photographer and loving following your work and things like that. So you can be on Instagram as much as you like, but it's full of other photographers, and that's great. You can form some really great relationships and see people develop and find new spots to go and photograph. But to sell your work, Instagram's not the spot.
Oh, yeah.
Like one of my mates who's a photographer is not going to buy one of my shots when he's standing next to me.
Oh, you never know.
And I've also started to run some workshops. So there's a little photography group that started in Anglesey. So I joined that. I've done a couple of talks to them, and then people out of that say, "Oh, we'd love to be able to take photos like yours." And so, it rolls out into taking some workshops and things like that.
Cool.
Which is really great. It's good to see the excitement in somebody else's face when they're learning. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but when it comes, I was talking to a guy yesterday, a photographer in Lawn, and he's got an Epson printer, and he prints all his own stuff. And I said, "Well, I don't." I've got a bit of a theory that I don't want to just be printing on, average paper and things like that. So it's all the stuff that I do is on sort of imported cotton rags and things like that. A lot of it's in larger format, 1.5 by a metre or 2 metres wide. So it's my aim is to be doing photography art, not just selling prints of my photos.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So I don't really want to be sitting at nothing. Please, there's nothing wrong with people that are sitting. I don't want personally to be sitting at a market on a Saturday, flogging my stuff for $150 a shot. So I would rather to try and have it as big, large format artworks hanging on people's walls. So and then on Saturday morning I can go and play golf.
Fair enough. So how much time do you spend with, was it Michael, in talking about, what it is that you want to get out of the print, and how do you make sure that you're getting, accurate colour and tonal sort of, representation? Because, obviously a screen is not the same as a bit of cotton rag, and, people's lighting and whatever isn't necessarily always going to show up, some of the moodier images to their best, So how do you get that sort of balance right?
Possibly when I first started printing, I used a group, and I won't name them, but they printed my images when I gave them to them. And they would always come back and they go, "Wow, that looks nothing like it did on the screen." And it's really dark.
That orange bit isn't orange.
A little bit of learning on the go, but then Michael I find him, he's great. And he's given me a lot of tips. One of the greatest tips was go back to your screen, get on the brightness button and take it back to just over 50%. And then when you've finished developing a photo and it looks really good to you, go in and add in 20% of white and take out about 10% of black. So get it perfect to your eye and then do that. And so, he always, he casts his eye over it. We talk about different papers for different, so he's very knowledgeable. He's a real asset to me, being able to print some really good stuff. So,
I think it's really important to have that relationship with you, with particularly large format printing. So it is a bit different if you're doing your own. You've got total control over the process, but you can't always get the high quality paper that readily if you're doing it on your own. And that relationship, I think, is really important to make sure that, you're having conversations like, yeah, you need a little bit more white in this one and a bit less black.
Yeah, and occasionally you go in, look, when you're doing it's just like if you go into here and you take that and you find your whites and just give it a bit of a pop, and it just adds a more contrast. So, learning all the time. But I mean, I've really never looked at printing my own stuff, and I probably should.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think it's just easy. If I've got a photograph and somebody wants to buy a print of it, then I shoot it down the line to him, and then he actually, even because I've got a relationship with two framers in Geelong, and then he'll drop it off, the print off to one of those two framers. So,
cool. That's nice.
And I've got to trust that if he looks at it and says it looks spectacular, then I've got to trust that he can just drop them off, and then I only have to drive it's only 20 minutes to Geelong, but I don't have to drive and pick up the print and then take it to the framers. He'll just drop it off. So it's that complete service that he'll offer, at no extra cost. So
very nice,
which is really good.
Yeah. So have you ever hit a creative wall?
Yeah, I did actually just before Christmas, I think. It was probably sort of November. We just had a run where there wasn't any great light. It just sort of, I think it was at the end of waterfall season down here. We were just coming out of lockdowns and things like that. And I'd been just going to the same local spots all the time. So especially during the winters down here. I mean, we're in regional Victoria, so we had it easier than people in Melbourne. But, we were still, a lot of the time we were stuck to 15 Ks, which means I could get to Bells to go surfing and I could get to Aireys Inlet. So that pretty much covered what I wanted to do anyway. So, but I don't think I went out shooting for, I don't know, about 2 months.
So
I don't know whether it was a creative block. It just, the conditions weren't right. I just wasn't motivated to do it. But we went, my wife is from Hobart, so we were going down to Tassie in January. So we lay very low during the Christmas, New Year, so we didn't catch COVID. So she refuses to get on the boat down to Tassie. So I drove up and jumped on the boat, and she flies directly to Hobart. And then I went on the boat and took 5 days. I went the West Coast. So the moment I arrived in Tassie, I had the bug again. Because I was in a new environment, so I was going to new places.
It's amazing how much a fresh location can get the juices flowing again.
Yeah, and when I got back, it's been rubbish conditions down here again. But then all of a sudden, the Milky Way's back in the sky, and we had a few clear nights, and then I'll set my alarm for 3:30 in the morning and just go and have a look. And as soon as you're out there, you go, oh, how good's this?
Nice. We're currently dreaming of clear nights here in Sydney. Or anywhere in New South Wales for that matter. What piece of kit can't you live without?
Oh, my 1635 f2.8.
Yeah.
And just between you and me, I'm living without it.
Okay.
Because when I was in Tassie, I was at the top of Mount Wellington on this amazing morning where there was just an inversion of clouds. So it was just this white cotton wool for as far as you could see. And then above it was just these perfect sunrise sky. It was all pink and orange and yellows. And it was just magnificent. So we got to the end of that. But it was, as typical, at the top of Mount Wellington, it was blowing a gale. And I'd sort of shifted spots as the sun had already come up, and I wanted to put a filter on my camera, and I let it. I wasn't hanging on to it, but a gust of wind came and blew it over.
Oh no!
So I got a couple of deep scratches in the front glass. So
ouch!
I sat on that for a month going, oh, are you kidding me? Oh, yeah. And then so this morning I actually dropped it off at the Canon Experience store, and they're gonna replace the front glass for me. Luckily, I've had my 1635 f4.
Yeah.
I still miss the other one. It's just such a beautiful lens.
Yeah, I've got one of those myself, and it almost never comes off the front of camera. It's put it this way, it's usually either that or the 70 to 200. But
I've got my eye on one of those.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying that and enjoying the difference that can make, particularly in landscapes. Getting that much closer to things, standing a bit further back in different locations, and
Well, interestingly, I saw a video, and I can't remember who it was by, but he was shooting panoramic landscapes using it.
Yep.
And he was like getting the foreground, so getting back a bit, picking something in the foreground and having it a quite wide aperture, so to throw the whole background out.
Yeah.
Some of his images would just pick a tree on a hill.
Yep.
With nothing really in the background. He was throwing the background out of focus, and then just having this beautiful tree and then he was shooting like 5 shots.
Yeah.
And stitching them together. And I went, I got to get me one of those.
Yeah. They're well worth it. They're well worth it. But it's they are a big investment. But as I say, the investment in these bits of glass, I think, is well and truly worth it if you're serious about your photography. It's not to say you can't take amazing shots. I've seen some amazing iPhone shots, and even just using point and shoots. But it really does make a difference if you want to get more creative, with that sort of thing that you were just talking about.
I've just finished telling you I like doing large format prints, and you're right. You learn pretty quickly when you're printing large format that if you don't have a good lens, you start to get restricted as to what size you can print.
Absolutely.
To.
So, there's only so much the smaller sensors and smaller lenses can do for you. Yeah. So what do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
Surfing is my passion.
Yep.
I love to go surfing. My wife is possibly one of the most social people you would ever meet. So we have a very full social agenda, which includes catching up for dinner with lots of people. So just hanging out with friends. Love surfing. I love golf. And I probably love golf more now than I did when I was in my 30s. For some reason, I thought I was probably going to turn pro, even though I was playing off 16, 17.
Okay.
I used to get very angry with my golf, but I think when I was in my early 40s, I think after having a bad round, I said, well, all I'm doing is not only ruining my day, but 3 other good friends' day. So get over yourself. You're never gonna go pro. So just enjoy it. So I love golf and the challenge. I'm getting old. I love gardening.
Yep.
I landscaped our backyard in Anglesey. So last year during lockdown, so lots of barrel loads of soil and things like that. So look, people said, and some of my old contemporaries who are still working say to me, "Oh, don't you get bored?" So I'll give you a call the day I feel like I'm bored. I've been retired for nearly 3 years now, and there hasn't been a day that I thought, "Oh, I wonder what I'll do today." Yeah. It's just so I tend to be able to fill my days, whether it's photography or surfing or golfing or.
Yeah. Well, I haven't met a photographer that has a business angle towards their photography that isn't busy.
Yeah.
And it's not a 5-day a week job either. It's 7 days a week.
Yeah, it is. And I find if you connect to the communities, like yesterday, a guy in Lorne contacted me.
Yep.
And he writes. He's a bit of a historian about the place, and they're about to do a burn, a fuel reduction burn in the hills behind Lorne in the Otway National Park. And so he contacted the head of fire management and said he had an idea that He's a bushwalker, so he was like a little bit choked up that they were going to burn his thing, but having lived through bushfires down there, he understands and supports it. And he had an idea that, wouldn't it be great to get photographs before, during, and after?
Absolutely.
And then at 3-month periods while the bush was regenerating. So he contacted me to ask me if I'd be involved. So yesterday I went and had a meeting with the head of the fire management, and that's the sort of thing. I know those meetings take up time, and now
that sounds like a really cool project, though.
I'm looking forward to it. I spoke to this guy, and he said, "So we'll go up, we'll take you up in a 4-wheel drive, and you can find your spot, and then we're going to geotag it so I can go back to the same spot." And then he said, "So on the day of the burn, we'll take you in." And I went, "Oh wow, how good is that going to be?"
Not many people outside the fire brigade fraternity get to see that.
I hope they know what they're doing, but I'm going to get to go stand up there and take photos while they're actually lighting it and it's burning, and then go back a few days later, and then on 3-monthly periods. So it should be a really great project, but that all takes time, and then it takes up your thought processes. So it's pretty easy to fill in your days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny, actually, the last time I was heading along the Great Ocean Road was way too many years ago. But they were actually doing a hazard reduction burn beside the road. Probably, there's a couple of Ks, the Melbourne side of the 12 Apostles. And, so for about, 8-10 kilometres along the side of the road, there was all these fires, just sort of running along beside the road as you drove down. It was quite a surreal experience. I mean, the smoke certainly wasn't helping my photography, but it was interesting sort of watching the process of, where they're walking along with the little burners and, dropping the little, seeds of the flame and whatever, and watching it all go up.
It's very interesting living in Anglesea, because there's people, and maybe the older fraternity, that are completely supportive of it, but there are some people in the community that are totally against it. But I was evacuated from Aireys Inlet in 1983 during Ash Wednesday, and I don't think anybody that went through that day would ever begrudge any decision to reduce fuel. That was just a horrific event, and I personally don't want to ever have to live through that again. So
no, I don't blame you.
Completely supportive of it.
Yeah. All right. I guess just sort of thinking about wrapping up now, but are there any photographers out there that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
How many do you want?
1 or 2. Three.
I'm not sure if you've spoken to Craig Richards.
No, I haven't spoken to Craig yet.
He is just he's a number one. He's a wonderful person, and I've met him a number of times, both down there and in New Zealand.
Yep.
So yeah, I think he's a very humble man. I'm not sure whether he'd do it. He is quite shy and very humble, but he's a brilliant photographer.
Yeah.
And who else? There's a guy I shoot with called Gary Eastwood.
Okay.
And I think he's just he's a technician. He's takes some beautiful photographs, and he's in his mid-60s, retired as well. So we do a lot of hiking into waterfalls and what have you together. Nice. And there's a guy actually who's his photos are completely different through his processing. That Piratescapes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Follow him down in Apollo Bay. He's a character. So he's an amazing man with a lot of stories, but he's good fun. And I really love, when I first saw his photos, I wasn't sure about them with his process, but I've grown to love them. And what it shows is that we can stand together and take a photograph wherever we are, and his photograph will look completely different to mine. And I think,
Absolutely.
wow, that is great. That is great that people they perceive the scene in a completely different way.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things that I love about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look, if of all of them, those three, I think would be very interesting. So.
Thank you for that. That's awesome. I've got one more question, and it's the most important one. You may have heard me ask this before, but do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yes. Yes. I like my pizzas. I actually like ordering a Hawaiian with salami.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So just to give it a little bit of
replacement for the ham, or on top of the ham?
No, with the ham.
With the ham.
Put it on top. But now I love pineapple on pizzas. Yeah. Now you got me hungry.
Yeah, it's not quite dinner time here.
No, it's not here either. And I'm going to a Greek restaurant tonight, so
very nice.
I don't think there'll be any pineapple.
No, not a lot of pineapple in Greek food.
No.
All right. Well, thanks very much for taking the time, Craig. Really enjoyed catching up with you, and it's been great to learn a bit more about you and how you do what you do. Where can people find your work?
Well, at CC Images, SEESEA Images, or if you add a .com.au, that's my website. So on Facebook, brilliant, or Insta. Yeah.
Thanks again.
No, thank you, and I look forward to catching up with you when you're cruising past Anglesey.
Absolutely, I'll look you up.
Okay, do it.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening, because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Grant Swinburne, and I hope to see you out shooting soon.